Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about communication skills, developers, and why they're bad at it. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, why are so many developers bad at communication, such as picking up the phone, answering emails, answering instant messages, and so forth? And the short answer is because we don't want you to bother us. Let me explain. Now, this might come as a shock to people who are extremely extroverted or extremely, well, I like to call them PowerPoint people. You spend most of your days going from one meeting to another meeting. This might be hard for you to understand, but when you are writing software, most of the time you spend in very deep thought. I know, right? It sounds weird. But most of the time, you're actually really concentrated on the problem that you are solving. So, as you can imagine, it's kind of disruptive to your workflow if you have someone who comes and calls you or sends emails to you or so forth, because you are concentrated. And one of the worst things that you can do to a software developer is to go up and, there's a famous comic strip about this, go up and pat them on the shoulder, because you may have just disrupted a thought process that they had to go through over maybe several hours. When you're debugging a system or you're trying to trace through a very complicated piece of logic, what you're basically doing is that you're thinking about a very long sequence of steps. It's like a tree of things that can happen. And you're trying to figure out in your mind how all of these things fit together. That requires a great deal of concentration. And as you can imagine, it's kind of disruptive to that process if you have a lot of people contacting you and communicating with you. Now, I will tell you that I don't think it's really fair to state that a lot of developers have poor communication skills because they may not be as, well, they may not get back to you as quickly as you want. Because communication skills and being someone who's on the phone all the time, I would say, is a very different thing. I will say that most of the developers that I know, they have pretty good communication skills. There are absolutely people who are extremely introverted to the point where they're not so good with communication, but a lot of them are completely ordinary, nice people. It's just that when they are working, they are concentrating. And the best thing for you as a stakeholder is to make sure that you don't bother them unnecessarily, because they are doing, even though they're at their computer, things that require a lot more concentration than you may expect. Now, if you really do need to talk to people, you really do need to talk to people. But I can tell you right now, one of the most common complaints in IT from the engineers department is going to be the amount of meetings. That's the most normal thing. It's the most common thing. I will be surprised if you go through in any company and ask what's the most disruptive thing to your process, and nobody says meetings, because that's it's like the mantra of complaints among developers. We have too many meetings, I can't concentrate, and so forth. And that is because most developers, as I said, they require a great deal of concentration. If you have like half an hour to do something, you're not going to be able to get into a very productive workflow. Writing software is a very creative process, and the creative process is very much like a trance. It's something that you go into and you stay under, if that makes sense, until something breaks your concentration. That's how you may have had this experience. You know, time flies by. That's usually where you are. You're in the flow process. You have a problem that you're dealing with that is interesting, stimulating, and so forth, and you just lose track of time. When I was starting out, I could be under for an entire day. I remember a few times when my girlfriend came home and asked me, "Have you eaten today?" And I realized that no shit, I haven't actually eaten since breakfast, I think. And then I realized that I was hungry. Now that's extreme, but that's the level of concentration that you can go into when you're dealing with a very stimulating and interesting problem. So what I want you to take away from this is that developers are on average not bad communicators. They are, in my experience, usually very normal people with normal communication skills. Some people are better at it, some people are worse. But the reason why you might not have them respond as quickly as you want or be very attracted to having a lot of meetings and sit downs and talk and so forth is because they want to get things done. And they require long periods of time of concentration to get anything productive done. Because you may think that you just sit down and then you start working and typing immediately, and that's not usually how it goes. It usually takes a few minutes at the very least of thinking before you get into, okay, this is kind of where I want to go with this. And then you can maybe write some lines of code, and then you have to do even more thinking. And you have this state of how the application and all the requirements should fit together in your head. And then someone comes up and goes, hey dude, can you come and check this thing? And it's all gone. And then you have to retrace a few of it, like we go back, and you might have to start that process all over again. So it's not weird. It's not that developers don't like people, not most commonly at the very least. It's just that the work that we do requires a lot of concentration. So if you want to find a sweet spot of some sort, try to figure out a way to be in contact with your developers at times where they're not in deep concentration, and then leave really long gaps between meetings so that they have time to get into a productive work mode. Because if you disrupt them every so often, they are going to start complaining about that they never get anything done. And it's true, because they can't start working the second they sit down at their computer. They need some time to get some traction on the problem, and then they can progress. Have a great day.